I hit the jackpot for $20 million. I quit my job and prepared to move back to my hometown. My boyfriend, Caden Sterling, reminded me not to show off my wealth to my family. I laughed at him for being so paranoid. Caden didn't say anything, but he changed my emergency contact on my phone to his number. "You have to promise me." My boyfriend Caden held my hand. He looked incredibly worried as he gave me one last warning. "Are you sure you don't want me to go with you?" I thought he was overthinking things. I wanted to tease him for being so cautious, but then I saw the deep concern in his eyes. He had actually taken time off work to accompany me because I get terrible motion sickness on the bus. He was worried I couldn't take care of myself alone. I patted his hand. "Go back to work. You need to keep an eye on that project at the office. I promise I won't tell them about the money. Don't worry." I finally nagged him into heading back to the station. He kept looking back at me as he walked away. I sighed and stood at the station entrance. I called my dad, acting a bit spoiled, and asked him to come get me. On the other end, my dad paused for a second. He asked why I was back so unexpectedly. I intentionally used a weak voice. "I worked myself sick. I quit my job to come home and recover. I want to see what it feels like to live with my parents for a while." The phone went silent for a few seconds. For some reason, a faint feeling of unease stirred in my heart. I tried to comfort myself, thinking maybe he was just shocked that I was ill. "I'll come get you after work," he said. He hung up immediately. I sat on a bench outside the station feeling a bit let down, but it was a weekday. My dad was known for being a serious worker. It made sense that he couldn't leave early to pick me up. I waited from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 7 o'clock in the evening. The sky turned dark and a heavy rain began to pour. My dad wouldn't pick up his phone. There were fewer and fewer people at the station. I started to feel scared. I had to run out into the rain after I hailed an Uber. The town wasn't very safe at night. I caught the driver watching me through the rearview mirror with a creepy look. I gripped my phone tightly the whole way. I didn't breathe a sigh of relief until the car stopped safely. I bolted toward my front door like I was escaping something. "Can we please not let her in? I don't want to live with a sick person. It's bad luck." My sister-in-law Mindy's voice drifted out. My hand froze right before I could knock. Then came my brother Rusty's impatient voice. "Mom, Mindy is 5 months pregnant. I won't let her stay in the same room as a walking biohazard." I let out a silent cold laugh. I gave up on knocking and pulled my keys from my bag. I opened the door and walked right in. "This is my house. I don't need your permission." "This is Cassie's house. You have no right to talk like that." My mother and I spoke at the same time. My mom was standing by the kitchen door. She looked at me and smiled, though she seemed a bit surprised. "Cassie, you're home." She saw that my hair was soaked. She quickly explained, "Your father had to work late tonight. He didn't have time to go get you." I cursed myself for being inconsiderate. I should have just taken a car earlier instead of expecting my dad to leave work for me. "Why didn't you knock? Where are your manners?" Rusty frowned and started nitpicking. He watched me struggle with my heavy suitcase, but his butt didn't move an inch from the sofa. "I told you this is my house. Why the hell would I knock on my own door?" I had never gotten along with Rusty. Every word we exchanged was a barb. My mom sighed and went back into the kitchen. Mindy leaned into Rusty's arms. She didn't hide her annoyance as she glanced at me. "So Cassie's back to leech off the family? Coming back from the big city is really something. You're so proud of being a burden." I didn't feel like wasting my breath on her. I walked past her toward my old bedroom. There was a little rabbit-shaped air freshener hanging on the door. I reached out, ripped it off, and threw it on the floor. "Cassie Ross, why are you throwing my things?" Mindy got angry. She stood up and screamed at me. "Don't you dare go in there." I ignored her and pushed the door open. The entire room had been painted pink. There was a soft rug on the floor and fairy lights everywhere near the windows at a crib. My room had been completely turned into a nursery. What is the meaning of this? I pointed into the room and demanded an answer. Mindy walked over with a scowl. She grabbed a bottle of disinfectant and started spraying it wildly into the room. "What does it look like? Are you blind? This is my baby's room. Get away from here. You're covered in germs. Don't stay in this room and infect my baby." Who are you calling full of germs? I was truly furious now I had paid for this house in full even if I didn't come home often. Keeping a room for me was only right. They hadn't even bothered to tell me before turning it into a nursery. You're the one who said you were sick and came back to recover. Who knows what kind of nasty disease you have? Mindy muttered, seeing my face darken. She quickly backed away and turned to Rusty for help. Can you stop making a scene, Cassie? Rusty stepped in and shielded Mindy. You just came in from outside. You haven't showered or disinfected. Your sister-in-law is carrying the Ross family heir. It's been 6 months. How did you become so selfish? I rolled my eyes. Are you serious, Rusty? If I were selfish, would I have let a loser like you leech off me in this house for years? Who are you calling a loser? Shut up. My father stood at the door with a grim expression. He glared at Rusty. Rusty, Mindy apologized to Cassie right now. Rusty snorted. He grabbed Mindy and stormed off into the master bedroom, slamming the door so hard it shook. The living room fell silent. My father's expression softened, then he gave me a guilty smile. I'm sorry, Cassie. I couldn't make it to pick you up today. Are you soaked? Go take a shower before you catch a cold. I felt a bit hurt. I pouted and started acting spoiled with him. My room is gone. Do you and Mom not want me anymore? Don't talk nonsense. My father's voice suddenly got loud, startling me. He quickly returned to his usual gentle tone. Don't overthink it, Cassie. It was my fault for not telling you about the nursery beforehand. He walked over and pulled me into a hug. Your sister-in-law is due soon. She wanted to set it up early. I thought you were a kind girl who would understand her, right? Those words felt a bit strange, but I was wrapped in his warm embrace. I didn't think too deeply about it. I just asked weakly. Then where am I supposed to sleep? Stay in the nursery for now. There's a big bed in there. Just make do for a few days. My father patted my back. Mindy thinks I'm covered in germs. My mother came out of the kitchen and raised her voice on purpose. Don't listen to her nonsense. Our precious girl doesn't have any germs. She just thinks she's special because of that belly. I burst out laughing, my tears turning into a smile. I didn't care what Rusty or Mindy thought of me. Our relationship had always been bad, and I had no interest in fixing it. As long as my parents still cared about me, that was enough. I took a hot shower and changed. By the time I came out, my mom had set the table with a feast. Rusty and Mindy were already eating. Looking cold and annoyed, my parents waited for me with smiles. Only after I sat down did they pick up their forks. My mom even brought out 2 plates of steamed seafood from the kitchen. Mom, why were you hiding this from us? Mindy complained. Are you afraid your grandson and I are going to eat you out of house and home? My mom glared at her but ignored the question. Here, Cassie. Your favorites, mantis shrimp and clams. Thanks, Mom. I smiled happily. I purposely smirked at Rusty and Mindy to show off how much I was loved. Eat, eat, eat. All she does is eat. Rusty slammed his fork onto the table and stood up. I don't know why you're so good to her. She quit her job just to come back and leech off us. You bastard. My dad raised his hand and slapped Rusty across the face. Rusty's cheek turned red and swollen instantly. He looked dazed for a moment. If you aren't going to eat, get back to your room. Stop making the house so miserable. Rusty stared at my dad in disbelief. Then he gave me a venomous look, pushed his chair over and stomped back to the master bedroom. Mindy felt awkward and followed him like a shadow. My dad stood there huffing for a bit before sitting down. He smiled at me. That scare you, Cassie? Your brother has been spoiled. He's useless. Eat up, Cassie. My mom said, gently putting food on my plate. Let's ignore them. I made everything you like. You've worked so hard. Just rest at home and don't feel pressured. Your father and I don't make much, but we can afford to take care of our precious girl. My eyes stung. Tears poured out uncontrollably as I hugged my mother tightly. Good girl, don't cry. You're a grown-up now. Isn't it embarrassing to cry like this? My mom held me and gently stroked my hair. In that moment, I almost told them about the $20 million. I wanted to tell them they didn't have to work anymore. I wanted to tell them their daughter would take care of them forever. You have to promise me. Do not tell them about the lottery when you get back. Caden's warning echoed in my ears. I bit my lip and swallowed the words. I changed the subject instead. Mom, maybe I should move back to that small condo I bought. Mindy is far along in her pregnancy. It's not good if we keep arguing. The air went weirdly still for a few seconds. It was just like when my dad had hesitated on the phone earlier. I looked up at my mom in confusion. She forced a panicked smile and tried to soothe me. Don't be silly. This is your home. Stay here and spend time with me. Don't you want to? Of course I do. I love you, Mom. I felt like I was missing something, but I didn't have time to think. My mom distracted me with more sweet talk. After dinner, my mom wouldn't let me help with the dishes. She insisted I go to my room to rest. I lay on the big bed, staring at the cloud-shaped lamp on the ceiling. This room was the most spacious guest room besides the master bedroom. Even Rusty used to live in a tiny room converted from a den. When Mindy moved in and got pregnant, they moved into the master bedroom. My parents didn't want to take my room, fearing I'd be uncomfortable when I visited, so they moved into the den because I had good grades and made money. I had always been treated better than Rusty. I always thought our family didn't prefer sons over daughters. I actually thought they preferred me. Thinking about my childhood, I drifted off to sleep. When I woke up, it was the middle of the night. I was thirsty, so I got up to go to the kitchen for water. As I passed the den, I heard my parents whispering inside. That was strange. It was after midnight. My parents usually went to bed early. Were they losing sleep because of my argument with Rusty? I tiptoed to the door and leaned in to listen to their conversation. In an instant, my blood turned to ice. My hands and feet went cold. The floorboards were cold beneath my bare feet, but the chill radiating from the den cut straight to my bones. I pressed my ear closer to the narrow crack in the door, holding my breath so tightly my chest ached. Are you sure the notary won't look too closely? My mother's voice leaked out, entirely stripped of the warm maternal syrup she had fed me at the dinner table. It sounded sharp, thin, and desperate. I took care of it, my father muttered, his voice low and gravelly. The guy at the courts owes me a favor from the old union days. Cassie's signature on the transfer deed looks identical to the one on her old college loans. By Monday morning, the title for that condo will clear under Rusty's name. The buyer's cash is already sitting in the escrow account. My heart hammered violently against my ribs. They transferred the title of my condo, the very property I bought with my first 3 years of hard-earned corporate savings, the place I worked 80-hour weeks to afford. But what if she checks her mail or her banking apps? My mother hissed. She's right here in the house, Tom. She mentioned moving back there tonight. What if she goes down to the property tomorrow and sees the locks changed? The whole thing could blow up in our faces. The loan sharks won't wait past next week. They already broke one of Rusty's fingers behind the auto shop. She isn't going anywhere tomorrow, my father said, his tone dropping into a chillingly calm cadence. Did you put the drops in the mantis shrimp like we planned? A heavy, suffocating silence filled the hallway. I felt the air leave my lungs completely. I did. My mother whispered. But Tom, it's heavy metal poisoning. It takes days. What if she gets too sick and calls an ambulance before she signs the final asset release forms for her savings accounts? If the doctors run a toxicology screen? They won't, my father snapped, cutting her off ruthlessly. She told everyone in the city she worked herself sick. She told me on the phone she was coming home to recover. If her heart gives out over the weekend, it's just a tragic complication of whatever exhaustion she brought back from the city. The insurance policy I took out on her 6 months ago covers accidental death and acute illness for $300,000. It pays off the rest of Rusty's debts and leaves enough to build the extension on the house for the baby. Rusty has to keep his mouth shut. My mother sighed, the sound of her pacing steps echoing against the linoleum inside. He almost ruined it tonight at the table. If you hadn't slapped him to make it look like we were taking her side, she might have left right then. Rusty's a fool, but he knows what's at stake. He knows his life depends on his sister failing to recover from her illness. My father let out a low, dry chuckle that made my skin crawl. Cassie always wanted to be the perfect daughter. She always boasted about how much she earned, how much she could do for this family. Well, now she's finally going to save us. I staggered backward, my hand flying to my mouth to catch the scream rising from my throat. The feast, the extra plates of seafood my mother insisted were just for her precious girl. The sudden, violent slap my father gave Rusty to defend my honor. It wasn't love. It was a production. A sickeningly orchestrated play designed to keep me trapped, compliant, and eating from a poisoned plate until my heart withered inside my chest. I wasn't their favorite child. I was their livestock. My thighs trembled as I backed down the dark hallway, every muscle screaming at me to run, to bolt through the front door into the pouring rain. But then I remembered the heavy click of the deadbolt my father always turned before bed. I remembered the creepy Uber driver, the dark, unfamiliar rural roads, and the absolute isolation of my hometown at night. Most of all, I remembered Caden. "Don't tell them about the money," Cassie promised me. He hadn't been paranoid. He had looked at my family's constant financial demands over the past 2 years and seen the predators beneath the skin. He had changed my emergency contact for a reason. I slipped back into the pink nursery, locking the door behind me with a faint trembling click. I ran into the adjoining bathroom, gripped the edges of the porcelain toilet, and shoved 2 fingers down my throat. I gagged violently, my eyes watering, until my stomach convulsed. I forced myself to vomit again and again, retching until my throat burned with pure acid and my ribs felt bruised. The mantis shrimp, the clams, the soup. I tore it all out of my system until there was nothing left but bitter yellow bile. Exhausted, I slumped against the cold tilled floor, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I turned on the sink faucet, rinsing my mouth and drinking straight from the tap to flush out whatever residue remained in my esophagus. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. I unlocked the screen. The clock read 12:42 a.m. I opened my messages and typed a single text to the number Caden had set up. "You were right. They are poisoning me. They already stole the condo. I'm locked in the room. Help." Within 5 seconds, the phone vibrated against my palm. "Caden, do not panic. Do not leave the room. Do not let them know you heard anything. I am leaving the station now with a state transport unit. I have a digital warrant for their financial records open on my ETA 45 minutes. Keep the door locked from the inside if they try to get in. Make noise. I love you. Hold on." A single tear cut through the sweat on my cheek. I wasn't alone. I had $20 million in a private account they knew nothing about. And I had a man who loved me enough to cross state lines in a thunderstorm to pull me out of the grave my own parents had dug for me. I stood up, wiped my face, and dragged the heavy oak rocking chair from the corner of the nursery, jamming it firmly beneath the old brass doorknob. Then I sat on the edge of the bed in the pitch blackness, my eyes fixed on the door, listening to the rain beat against the glass like a countdown. At 2:15 a.m., the floorboards outside the nursery groaned. The sound was faint, masked by the steady rumble of the storm, but my senses were heightened to a razor's edge. I slowly stood up from the bed, slipping my phone into my pocket, my fingers wrapping around a heavy ceramic lamp on the nightstand. The brass doorknob jiggled gently at first. Then, a firm pressure was applied as someone tried to push the door open. The wood creaked against the wedged back of the rocking chair. "Cassie," it was my mother's voice, a soft, high-pitched coo that made my stomach turn. "Cassie, honey, are you awake? I brought you some warm herbal tea to help with your chest. You looked so pale at dinner." I didn't answer. I stood perfectly still in the shadows, my heart thudding like a muffled drum. "Cassie." The tone shifted slightly, losing a fraction of its warmth. The knob rattled harder. "Why is the door locked? We don't lock doors in this house. Open up, sweetheart. Let me look at you." Silence filled the room. Outside the window, a flash of lightning illuminated the pink walls, casting long, monstrous shadows from the empty white crib in the corner. "Tom," my mother whispered sharply down the hall. "Tom, come here. The door is jammed from the inside." Heavy, hurried footsteps approached. My father didn't bother with the gentle act. He slammed his palm against the wood. "Cassie, open this door right now." "What the hell are you doing?" "Your sister-in-law needs to get into the closet to get her maternity pillow. Don't start being difficult the second you get back." "I'm sleeping, Dad," I called out, forcing my voice to sound thick, drowsy, and weak. "I don't feel well. My stomach hurts really badly." Let me rest until morning. I heard my parents exchange whispered, frantic words through the wood. Is the poison working already? My mother murmured. Must be, my father muttered back. Then he raised his voice again, his tone hardening into an authoritative bark. Cassie, I'm not going to ask you again. Unlock this door. You don't own the space anymore. We let you sleep here out of charity. Move the furniture. No, I said, my voice losing its fake weakness, turning cold and sharp. I paid for this house, Dad, every single brick. If I want to lock the door to my own room, I will. A sharp intake of breath came from the other side. The illusion of the loving patriarch shattered instantly. You arrogant little bitch, my father snarled, throwing his weight against the door. The frame shattered, and the old wood around the latch began to splinter. You think you're better than us because you went to the city? You're nothing. You're a parasite trying to crawl back into our pockets. Rusty, get the crowbar from the garage. I'm already here. Rusty's voice rang out from the hall, laced with a vicious, cowardly excitement. Let me break the lock, Dad. She's probably got her laptop and we need her banking passwords anyway before she gets too weak to talk. Hurry up. Mindy shrieked from the background. She's going to ruin the paint. If she bleeds on the new rug I bought, I'll never forgive her. They weren't even hiding it anymore. They thought I was trapped, weakened by the heavy metals they believed were currently dissolving my nervous system. They thought they were dealing with a dying girl. Crack. The tip of the iron crowbar jammed through the seam of the door, splintering the white paint. You have 30 seconds, Cassie. My father shouted over the sound of tearing. You will sign the authorization papers for the condo transfer and give us the access codes to your personal savings, or we'll make sure your illness becomes a lot more painful. I backed toward the window, my eyes starting to the clock on my phone. 2:28 a.m. Caden was still 12 minutes away. The storm outside had turned into a torrential downpour, flooding the gravel driveway below. Rusty, heave, my father ordered. The door groaned violently as the rocking chair began to slide across the slick hardwood floor. The gap widened by an inch, revealing my father's bloodshot, greedy eyes staring into the darkness of the room. There you are, he whispered. A horrific predatory grin spreading across his face. Be a good girl, Cassie. Just give us what we want and we'll make sure the funeral is nice. The price of treachery. With a final massive splintering crash, the door frame gave way. The rocking chair flipped onto its side, and the door swung wide open, banging against the wall. My father stepped into the room first. His face contorted into something monstrous. Behind him stood Rusty, holding the iron crowbar like a club. And my mother, her face pale, but hardened into a mask of pure coldness. Mindy hovered in the back, her arms crossed over her pregnant belly, her eyes gleeful with anticipation. End of the line, Cassie. Rusty sneered, stepping forward. Give up the phone and the passwords. Don't make me use this. I didn't move. I stood by the window. The cold rain sprang through the screen onto my back. I looked at each of them. The people who shared my blood. The people I had spent my entire youth trying to please, to protect, to elevate out of poverty. Why? I asked, my voice remarkably steady. I bought you this house. I sent you money every single month. I paid off your credit cards, Mom. I bought you a new truck when your old one broke down, Dad. Why would you kill me for a condo? Because it was never enough. My father roared, his fists clenching. You always threw it in our faces. Look at Cassie, the smart one. Look at Cassie, the rich one. While your brother was struggling, you were living in a high-rise, looking down on us. And now you come back here telling us you quit your job. We can't afford to feed another mouth, Cassie. We need that condo money to keep Rusty out of a ditch. You brought this on yourself by coming back empty-handed. Empty-handed? I repeated softly. A cold, bitter laugh escaped my lips. You think I came back empty-handed? Shut up, Rusty yelled, lunging forward to grab my arm. I don't care about your stories. Give me the phone. Before his hand could touch my skin, the entire neighborhood was suddenly illuminated by a blinding, piercing blue and red light. The harsh glare cut through the glass of the window, painting a pink nursery's walls in violent flashing colors. The high-pitched wail of multiple police sirens tore through the night air, echoing down the quiet suburban street. What the hell? Rusty spun around, his face instantly draining of color as he looked out the window. Down in the driveway, 3 black state police cruisers and a tactical transport vehicle screeched to a halt, their tires tearing up the grass. The doors flew open and half a dozen heavily armed officers in tactical vests vaulted out, their flashlights cutting through the dark rain like lasers. State police, open the door, up against the wall. A booming voice amplified by a megaphone sounded almost enough to shatter the glass of the front living room windows. My father froze, his jaw dropping. My mother let out a sharp, terrified shriek, instantly dropping to her knees. Tom, what did you do? Who called the cops? It wasn't me. My father stammered, his eyes darting wildly from the window to me. Cassie, what did you do? The front door downstairs didn't stand a chance. A heavy battering ram slammed into the frame, and the sound of splintering timber echoed up the stairwell, followed by the heavy synchronized thud of combat boots rushing up the stairs. In here. Secure the hallway. Within 3 seconds, the nursery door was flooded with tactical lights. Rusty dropped the crowbar with a clatter, raising his hands above his head, trembling so violently, his knees knocked together. On the ground, face down, hands behind your back, 2 officers shouted, rushing into the room and slamming Rusty and my father into the floorboards. Through the sea of black vests and blinding lights, a familiar figure stepped into the room. Caden was drenched from the rain, his police windbreaker dark with water, his badge gleaming against his chest. His eyes scanned the room frantically until they landed on me. He didn't care about protocol. He shoved past the arresting officers, grabbed me by the shoulders, and pulled me into a fierce, protective embrace. I buried my face in his chest, the scent of rain and leather finally breaking the icy terror that had gripped my heart. Are you okay? Did you get it out? He whispered into my hair, his voice thick with a terrifying mix of rage and relief. I'm okay, I choked out, nodding against his chest. I threw everything up. I'm okay, Caden. The medical unit is downstairs, he said, turning me gently toward the door. Then he looked down at my father, who was currently pinned under an officer's boot, his face pressed against the pink rug. Thomas Ross, Caden said, his voice dropping into a lethal, quiet register that made the room fall completely silent. You are under arrest for attempted murder in the 1st degree, conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, and grand theft. Your wife and son are being charged as co-conspirators. This is a mistake. My mother wept from the floor, her hands cuffed behind her back. She's our daughter. We love her. We were just having a family argument. Officer, please. She's sick. She's hallucinating. Caden didn't even look at her. He pulled a thick folder of documents from his inside pocket and tossed it onto the floor in front of my father's face. We intercepted the digital escrow transfer 40 minutes ago. Caden said coldly. We already have the bank manager who took your bribe in custody and the herbal drops your wife kept in the pantry. The hazmat unit downstairs just confirmed it's industrial-grade thallium sulfate. You didn't just try to steal her money. Tom, you tried to execute her. Mindy was hyperventilating in the corner, clutching her stomach as an officer let her out of the room. I didn't know about the poison. I swear I didn't know. I just wanted the room. Cassie, tell them I didn't know. Rusty looked up from the floor, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the dust of the rug. Cassie, please. We're brother and sister. You can't let them take me to prison. The cartel. If I go to jail, they'll kill me inside. Just pay them off. You have money in the city, don't you? Help me. I stood beside Caden, looking down at the broken, pathetic remnants of the family I had loved so blindly. The sadness was gone, replaced by a crystal-clear, unyielding clarity. I don't have money in the city, Rusty, I said softly, the room falling quiet enough to hear the dripping rain outside. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, unlocked the screen, and opened the private banking application. I walked over to where my father lay, kneeling down just enough to hold the glowing screen 3 inches from his face. The numbers on the screen were clear, bold, and undeniable. $20 million, my father's eyes expanded until the whites showed completely, his breath caught in his throat. A wet choking sound rattling in his chest. My mother looked up from her corner, her jaw slack, her eyes transfixed by the row of zeros glowing in the dark room. "I won the Powerball last week," I whispered, my voice cutting through the silence like a razor blade. $20 million, Dad, cash payout. I quit my job because I never have to work a single day for the rest of my life. I came back to this town because I was going to surprise you. I was going to buy you the estate on the hill. I was going to pay off Rusty's debts in full, send his kid to whatever college he wanted, and make sure you and Mom never had to worry about a medical bill again. A horrific, hollow shriek tore from my mother's throat, a sound of absolute, soul-crushing regret that sounded less like a human and more like a wounded animal. "No," my father whimpered, his face turning an ashy, deathly gray against the floor. "No, Cassie, please. You sold my life for a $300,000 insurance policy and a 2-bedroom condo," I said, standing up and tucking the phone back into my pocket. I turned my back on them, grabbing Caden's hand. "You burned down a mountain of gold just to steal a handful of dirt. Enjoy the prison food, Dad. I hear the seafood is terrible. Get them out of here," Caden ordered the team. The house filled with the sound of my family screaming, begging, and weeping as they were dragged down the stairs in chains. Their cries grew fainter and fainter until the front door slammed shut, leaving only the sound of the rain and the quiet hum of the police radios. 2 weeks later, the sun was shining brightly over the coastal cliffs of Big Sur. The air smelled of salt, pine, and absolute freedom. I stood on the expansive wooden deck of a newly completed cliffside villa, watching the white foam of the Pacific crash against the rocks below. The house was massive, filled with light, glass, and clean lines, completely devoid of pink paint, fairy lights, or the suffocating weight of my childhood memories. The doctors had cleared the remaining toxins from my blood with a 5-day stay in the hospital. The quick thinking to purge the food had saved my kidneys from any permanent damage, though my doctor said I'd have a strong aversion to seafood for the foreseeable future. The legal proceedings were moving with terrifying speed with Caden's evidence and my testimony. The state prosecutor had refused any plea deals. My father and Rusty were facing 25 years to life for attempted murder and conspiracy. My mother had taken a deal to testify against them, but she was still looking at 12 years in a maximum security facility for her part in the attempted murder. The condo had been returned to my name, and I had already sold it, donating every single penny of the proceeds to an organization that helps victims of domestic abuse. A pair of strong, familiar arms wrapped around my waist from behind, pulling me back against a warm chest. Caden rested his chin on my shoulder, his dark hair catching the golden afternoon light. "The mover just finished setting up the office downstairs," he murmured, his voice laced with that quiet, grounding comfort that had become my sanctuary. "And the local sheriff's department just called. My transfer went through. I start as the lead investigator for the county next Monday." I turned around in his embrace, looping my arms around his neck. "Are you going to miss the city station?" "Not for a second." He smiled, his eyes warm and completely clear of the worry that had plagued him 2 weeks ago. "I prefer the view here, and I like knowing that the richest woman in California has the best security detail money can buy." I laughed, a real light sound that bounced off the glass walls of our new life. "You were right about everything, Caden," I said softly, leaning up to press my lips against his. "Thank you for being my emergency contact." "Always," he whispered against my lips. "From now on, I'm the only person you ever have to call." I looked out over the endless blue ocean, the $20 million sitting safely in a trust fund we would use to build something beautiful. The past was buried in a small, dark town in the rain behind of us. And ahead of us, the horizon was wide open, bright, and completely ours.